What's good, YouTube? Dom Statement Sports Cards here, back with another video. I will be doing a video response today for Sammy Thunder. Congrats on 700 subs. If you are not following Sammy already, you're missing out. He is super passionate for vintage cards, whether that be baseball or basketball. He's got a great collection. He's super generous and friendly with all the people in the comments section. Great guy. I was happy that I got to meet you at the National this year in Atlantic City. He has a really cool idea for his 700 giveaway, and that's to pick your favorite pitcher and hitter from the 80s, 70s, 60s, 50s, and pre-war. So 10 really awesome players you get to choose, and to just show a card for each player. I'm really excited, and let's get into the cards. I decided to pick players that contributed to more than half of the decade on mine, but whatever you want to pick, it's your players. But for my pitcher, I picked Dennis Eckersley. Look at the hair, man. My Red Sox have been so bad this year that he is retiring from the booth at the end of the season. He does not want to see any more. He's going to retire into the sunset, getting as many girls now as he did in the 70s and 80s. In the 80s, he started off with my Red Sox, had a few very good years there, became a relief ace with Chicago in the mid-80s, and then in the late 80s, he really stamped his ticket to the Hall of Fame with his dominant relief era in Oakland, winning the World Series in 1989 for the Oakland A's, his only championship. A couple of years later, in 92, he had his Cy Young MVP season when he was just at the top of the world in terms of relief aces. So, Dennis Eckersley is my pitcher for the 80s. I love that 79 tops with the vintage Red Sox jacket. For hitter, I chose Iron Man. Cal Ripken Jr., 6'4" shortstop that played every day. All that weight and lankiness on those knees, playing a demanding defensive position, and hitting for power and driving in runs. Immediate impact, helping the Baltimore Orioles win the World Series in 1983. He was just a consummate professional, someone that everyone can look up to, and is in your top 5 shortstop list. For me, I'd argue he's the best shortstop to ever play. So that is my 80s. For the 1970s, I went with a man who has 4 Cy Young Awards and 4,000 strikeouts. Steve Carlton, lefty, was a very good pitcher in the beginning of his career with St. Louis, was looked at as kind of like a project, end of the rotation guy. And then as he started to become the clear number 2, he wanted more money. And the Cardinals shipped him out of town to arguably the worst franchise in the sport, Philadelphia. And in his first season, he wins 20 games on a team that did not have a lot of wins. And it's one of the more impeccable pitching seasons of all time. Steve Carlton was a true difference maker, and I think the switch to Philadelphia really just reinvigorated him into becoming the Hall of Fame legend that we all know today. I love the colors in 1976, the pink and the yellow, with the old Phillies jersey showing his windup. Really cool. And the best detail, I think, for this card is that the generic cartoon showing pitcher is also left-handed. So, really knocked it out of the park with this card here, Topps. Steve Carlton is my pitcher for the 1970s. Was really tough for me to pick a hitter. So many great ones. I went with the engine for the Big Red Machine, Joe Morgan. This 1977 Venezuelan League sticker is just amazing. He had a great start to his career too in Houston. He was a fun player, made some all-star teams. But when he moved over to Cincinnati, he really was that final piece to the Red Machine that just made it go. Johnny Bench, one of the best catchers of all time. Pete Rose, one of the best contact hitters of all time. Tony Perez, one of the most underrated run producers to ever play. Joe Morgan made things go. Offensively, defensively, on the base paths. He was just a difference maker. Helped them win championships. He won back-to-back MVPs in the 70s, and very much like the other players on this list, I think punched his ticket to Cooperstown in that decade. So, Joe Morgan makes my 70s squad. The 1960s, it was the time of Koufax, but one pitcher pitched the entire decade and capped it off with such a great season that they had to lower the mound. Bob Gibson, just pure anger on the mound. A guy that would stare into your soul, throw at your head, and then strike you out. Unbelievable pitcher. Like I said, in 68, he had the lowest ERA in league history for a full season. They lowered the mound because of it. Just utter dominance in the 60s for Gibson. And this 65 Topps card is my personal favorite of his. His Pepto-Bismol rookie card is really cool. He has some other great issues. But the black and the red on this, the pennant that says cards, the stare that he has is just all screaming vintage baseball to me. And I've always loved this card. Bob Gibson is my 60s pitcher. And if there was a doubt on who would be my 60s hitter, you guys haven't been paying close enough attention. This man had huge shoes to fill when he came up in the 60s and finally started to deliver in this year, 1967. Carl Yastrzemski had finished up his studies and finally gotten his college degree that he promised his parents he would get in 1966. Then he was able to turn his full focus onto being the best baseball player that he could be. Ends up changing his batting stance slightly in a swing, winning the American League Triple Crown, and until Miguel Cabrera did in 2012, was the last one to do it, leading the Impossible Dream Red Sox to their first World Series since 1941, or 46. Unbelievable. And I think that 67 Triple Crown season was really what turned his career from suitable replacement to Ted Williams to Hall of Fame replacement to Ted Williams. And I love the 67 Topps card. And those are my guys for the 60s. '50s, the pitching was a very tough one for me, actually. Considered Warren Spahn, considered Sandy Koufax, even though his better years were in the 60s. But a guy that I've just been buying a ton of and grown more and more respect for is Early Wynn. Beautiful 57 Topps here. Early Wynn is one of the most overlooked pitchers, I think, in the history of the game. He was overshadowed pitching with Feller and Lemon, but he would just go out there every fourth day, give a quality start, and give his team a chance to win. And I've always found it ironic that his last name is Wynn. He ended his career with exactly 300 wins, which I don't think we'll ever see again. And that mean look on his face, ending the 50s with a World Series run and Cy Young in 1959. So, Early Wynn, my pitcher of the 50s. I would take him on my staff any day. For hitter, there's a lot of great ones in the 50s, including Ted Williams, But I've shown my 51 Williams on this channel before, and I was trying to show cards that I hadn't shown in the past. And the player that I believe is the best to ever put on a baseball uniform, guys start in the 50s. That's the Say Hey Kid. 1955 Bowman is probably my favorite set from the 50s. It's just beautiful. Willie Mays missed a couple years in the 50s due to service time, but he won his first MVP in the 50s. He won his only World Series championship in the 50s. And the play that he is known for best, the amazing catch and throw-in that he did in the Polo Grounds, also happened in the 50s. You could put him as your favorite player for the 50s, the 60s, even the 70s. That year in cup of coffee change that he had with the New York Mets, he's getting his number retired there in New York. 5-tool player, absolutely unbelievable, would be a great player in any era. And you should be buying all the affordable Willie Mays while you can, because cards like this are already insane. His 60s and 70s releases and different off-brand regional stuff will only continue to go up. So Willie Mays is my 50s hitter. For pre-war, I am only starting to dip my toes into pre-war, so I don't have a ton of pre-war cards. But I wanted to show a pitcher that even though it's not a pre-war card, I desperately want to have a card from his playing days. I think he just doesn't get enough love, and that's Walter Johnson. If you look at his baseball reference page, you could make an argument that he's a top 5 baseball player that ever lived. How dominant he was, his WAR is insane, his strikeouts. He was an absolute monster on the mound, the big train. One of baseball's first hard ball throwers. And you could just look on his face. The guy with no expression would just keep hurling it at you all game. And in my opinion, one of the best pitchers to ever play, arguably the best pitcher to ever play. My absolute vintage dream card, the only card that could possibly challenge my Carl Yastrzemski rookie in my collection for the casket card, is his Ramley. That card is not one that comes up very often. And I would assume with the way the market is right now, it's out of my price range, especially me just being 23. But if I can get that card when I'm older, I will cherish it forever. If not, I will happily settle for a playing days portrait of the great Walter Johnson. So Walter Johnson had to be my pitcher, even though he's not in a pre-war card here. For hitter, I had something pulled away, and it was an exhibit, but another card came in today from my good friend Brian, B-Route 6, and I was going to give this its own video because it is such a big pickup for me, but I figured why not include it in Sammy Thunder's VR. I saw this on his Facebook group, and I had to make a deal with him for it. 1936 exhibit 4-on-1. This exhibit is special for many reasons. It has Lefty Grove on it. It has Joe Cronin on it. It has Rick Farrell on it. And it has the great Double X Jimmy Fox on it. 4 Hall of Famers, none of which were represented in my collection currently. Huge pickup for the PC. But why this is also really special is they are all Boston Red Sox. This is a Boston American League 4-on-1 card, and it is just unbelievable. I am still speechless holding this. Brian, thank you so much. I killed 4 birds with 1 stone, and to own a Jimmy Fox card is just so surreal. So Jimmy Fox, represented by this 4-on-1, is my hitter for pre-war. John Mangini says it all the time, that he is one of the most underrated hitters ever. I think the only 2 first basemen you can argue are better are Lou Gehrig and Albert Pujols. He was just crazy. Another guy that if you look at his baseball reference page, absolutely unreal. Congrats again to Sammy on 700 subs. I can't wait to see more of your content as you continue to climb towards 1,000, my friend. Hope you guys enjoyed this long-winded video, me going through the decades. I'm really hoping to see a lot more of you guys supporting Sammy by subscribing and participating in this contest. I think it's really simple, but has a really great range of possibilities from collector to collector. Hope you guys have a great weekend. Keep collecting. Peace.